Hey guys, this is your host Thomas Tyree here from On the Hot Podcast. Today, this is going to be the Combat Series episode number 110 for you guys today. And to kick off this week's Combat Series, I'll be discussing the fight that took place last night in the sport of boxing between Manny Pacquiao and Mario Barrios. So it was Manny Pacquiao, the 46-year-old legend, the icon, the Hall of Famer, one of the greatest of all time, returned back to the welterweight division that he reigned supreme in for a very long time in his prime days in the sport of boxing. He returned last night to fight Mario Barrios for the WBC welterweight championship. And his triumphant return came to a halt because this fight ended in a majority draw. When a majority draw happens, the champion retains their championship. So therefore, Mario Barrios walked out of the MGM Grand Arena with the WBC welterweight championship still in his possession, with the fight ending in a majority draw. So I'll be going over the fight for you guys. So last night between Mario Barrios and Manny Pacquiao, I knew the fight was going to be a very underrated fight heading into the weekend. A lot of buzz was already surrounded by Manny Pacquiao, one of the greatest of all time, returning. But I said to you guys last week that this could be one of the best fights of the weekend, and it was. And Manny Pacquiao is, as great as he is, one of the greatest of all time, actually defined the odds yesterday, being a 46-year-old legend, having 4 years away, being away from the sport for 4 years, took a world champion, Mario Barrios, in his prime. It was a 16-year age gap, but he still took Mario Barrios, who's 30, to the championship rounds, and it went to all three judges that scored a majority draw. Now, watching the fight last night, I thought Manny Pacquiao won the fight. Originally, I scored it 115-113 in favor of Manny Pacquiao. But then when you look back at the judges, I think they got it right with the draw, because it was a very close fight, and in order to take the championship away from the champion, you got to do enough. And you can't sometimes leave in the judges' hands, especially as close as that fight was, because rounds 10, 11, and 12, I think Mario Barrios clearly won all three of those rounds. And that's the reason why he was able to get a majority draw to keep the WBC welterweight championship intact. But I did like what I saw out of Manny Pacquiao. He still got it. I mean, the punches and flurries, he still looked great for his age, moving around the ring. The footwork was on full display, fighting well on the inside, catching Mario Barrios and times and made it feel uncomfortable landing the counter shots. I mean, this isn't the same prime Manny Pacquiao, but this Manny Pacquiao came to fight, and he came well prepared, not willing to die down for a payday. Was actually this close of winning the WBC welterweight championship last night. But again, I think when you look at it, Mario Barrios, you got to say he stole at least 2 out of 3 rounds. I think he personally won all 3 rounds, 10, 11, and 12 in the championship rounds. Looked like Manny Pacquiao was getting a little tired, a little fatigued, but that happens when you're nearly 50, returning back to a young man's sport. But I think that draw was the right decision. Again, both fighters were landing clean counter shots, good jabs, and clean punches in the pocket, and they exchanged well. But again, you got to do enough to take a championship away from a champion. And yes, in the beginning part, it was all Manny Pacquiao. But then the fight got closer in the second half of the fight, and those 3 rounds really decided the fact that it was going to be a draw. And if Mario Barrios was going to win, he needed a knockout. So at least for him to squeak by with a draw to keep that WBC welterweight title intact, he'll take the draw based off of what he gave us in the final 3 rounds. Because if you look at it by the numbers, Mario Barrios in rounds 10, 11, and 12, Mario Barrios outlanded Manny Pacquiao punch-wise in rounds 10 and 11, and only in round 12, both fighters only landed a total of 10 punches in the final 3 minutes of the fight. So when you look at that, the judges are going to go with the champion to keep his title. If Mario Barrios got the decision, that would have been a robbery. But I will say the majority draw is a good, respectful outcome to this fight. So again, last night I was like, man, he won. But then I was like, let me go back and watch it to talk to you guys about this fight for as I record this segment. But again, I do think a majority draw was the right decision. Sports bettors out there, I will say I have been, ever since the Gervonta Davis and Lamont Roach fight, I know this is off topic, but ever since that fight, I've always been thinking about throwing $1 on one of these big time fights for a draw. This would have been a perfect opportunity. I'm just telling you guys, sports bettors, just throw $1, $2 with these big time fights ending in a draw, because you never know what can happen in these close fights. You never know what the judges are thinking at ringside. We know boxing can be a corruptive sport when the judges are involved. I think this is a prime example for sports bettors out there. Just throw $1 or $2 for a draw. You never know. You might win your money. And it's probably a big outcome based on them type of odds. But getting back on topic, I did like the game plan that I saw out of Manny Pacquiao. Again, he was explosive. The power punches were connecting to Mario Barrios, going back to his old style. He was attacking Mario Barrios to the body. He learned that attack Mario Barrios to the body because he can't be a little soft. Gervonta Davis had success against Mario Barrios, attacking the body, scored a knockdown in their fight in the summer of 2021. So he was also landing punches and flurries. I was really impressed with what I seen from Manny Pacquiao. He was not there for a payday. He was actually there for his legacy to win one more world championship in his illustrious Hall of Fame career. And I actually think if Manny Pacquiao did win the WBC welterweight championship last night, I think it would have been the first time in boxing history that a boxing Hall of Famer came out of retirement to win a world championship. So that would have been really remarkable, phenomenal. But as for Mario Barrios, the game plan was pretty solid as well. He did have his moments in this fight against Manny Pacquiao, landing punches when Manny Pacquiao was getting too aggressive and too greedy, trying to fight on the inside. Mario Barrios was there to capitalize on Manny Pacquiao's mistakes. He was very aggressive fighting on the inside and had success landing a lot of jabs and landing a lot of power punches. So the game plan for Mario Barrios was simple and effective throughout times in the fight, but it was not enough for him to get the nod to actually successfully retain the welterweight championship, and instead went into a draw. But I will say, if Manny Pacquiao did win this fight, if he did win the fight today or tonight as I record this, if he was the WBC welterweight champion, it would have been historically great for the sport of boxing that had a tremendous day across the board, no matter what promotion, whether you watch it on Matchroom Boxing, Queensberry Promotions, PBC. It was a historic day in boxing yesterday. I mean, you had Alexander Usyk becoming a two-time undisputed heavyweight champion. You had Bam Rodriguez having a phenomenal performance over there on Matchroom with DAZN. You had Fedor in the co-main event, Sebastian Fedor having a phenomenal title defense against Tim Tszyu, making him quit on the stool. In the second half of that fight, it would have added more value to the sport of boxing today if we woke up with Manny Pacquiao, still us waking up and processing that Manny Pacquiao was a world champion at 46 years of age. And that would have honestly sparked the rematch between himself and Floyd Mayweather, because behind the scenes, Floyd and Manny were trying to discuss and come up with negotiations for a second fight, not an exhibition, a second professional fight. And we know 10 years ago, we got that fight a little too late. That fight was trash, didn't live up to the moniker as being one of the greatest fights of all time that we expected. I can't even imagine what that fight would look like in 2025. I mean, Floyd has not had a professional fight since 2017. His last professional fight was against Conor McGregor, and he's been doing exhibitions here and there. Manny Pacquiao did look good, but who wants to see a Floyd versus Manny Part 2, 10 years removed from their horrible fight that they had in the twilight days of their illustrious boxing career? So one of the reasons why I'm happy that Manny didn't win, because the WBC would have ordered that would have been a PBC Al Heyman special that we would have gotten by the end of 2025. So I'm happy. Some of me is happy that Manny Pacquiao did not win this fight. But as for Mario Barrios, I still view this man as a B- fighter. I think the potential is there for him to be great. I shouldn't say great, but a very good fighter still. But when you look at Mario Barrios' resume, Ugas is his only big win. He cannot win the big fights on the big-time stage. Remember, he defeated Ugas to win the interim WBC welterweight championship, and then he was elevated to the main WBC welterweight champion when Terrence Crawford vacated all the titles on 147, moved up to 154, or 154, 155. So now I'm thinking the losses are starting to pile up for Mario Barrios. He lost against Gervonta Davis, lost against Keith Thurman. Now you just had a draw with a 46-year-old Manny Pacquiao. And in his WBC welterweight title defenses, he has not had one successful title defense in his two world title defenses so far. He's had 2 draws instead of 2 successful title defenses. So you look at what he did against Abel Ramos, that was supposed to be a cakewalk victory for him in his first world title defense. That actually turned out to be a nightmare. Got dropped in that fight on the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson card in November. And now you just went with a draw with a 46-year-old man that took a 4-year layoff from the sport in Manny Pacquiao. So it's not looking good for Mario Barrios, and honestly, he is the weakest link at welterweight champions-wise, because you look at Jaron Ennis, he's going to be a world champion for a little bit longer until he officially moves up to 154, but he holds the Ring Magazine title, WBA title, IBF title. He is not a weak link champion-wise. Brian Norman Jr. with the WBO welterweight championship is not a weak link. So then that makes me think Mario Barrios is the weakest link at 147. And his championship defenses speak for itself. I think the only way to go about this, the correct way, is how close the fight was, how entertaining it was for a lot of people. The fans came out to Vegas. I know a lot of people were watching around the world because Manny Pacquiao is a household name. There was a lot of boxers in attendance. There was actually a lot of people watching this fight last night. So I think the correct way to do business, if you're PBC and Al Heyman, you have this rematch by the end of the year. Manny versus Mario is the right decision for the welterweight division for the WBC title. PBC does not have any big fights lined up, and I think this is only their second pay-per-view event of the year, which is actually insane. With that new deal that they have with Amazon Prime, they're hardly putting together any pay-per-view events. But at the moment, they don't have another big event planned for the year because we don't know what the hell is happening with the Gervonta Davis and Lamont Roach situation with Tank being arrested a week or so ago. That fight was supposed to be August 16th. That's looking like that's not going to happen because there's hardly any time to build up the fight and promote the fight, and it's July 20th, so I don't think that fight's going to happen in August at least, maybe later on in the year. But I think as close as this fight was, they should run it back, and I think the WBC should order the rematch because Manny Pacquiao was 1 point away or 2 points away from capturing the welterweight title, becoming one of the oldest world champions in boxing history with the names of Bernard Hopkins and George Foreman. So I think they should run this back. I think that should be next with the belt, with WBC welterweight division or welterweight title picture. Run it back between Mario Barrios and Manny Pacquiao by the end of the year. But that is my fight summary on the fight that took place last night between Manny Pacquiao and Mario Barrios.